Farmers across Canada are warning the strike at the St. Lawrence Seaway is jeopardizing their harvests. We are day 6 into this job action, and it has halted much of the East Coast transport of commodities, including grain and soybeans. Growers say the stoppage prevents them from transporting crops, leaving storage bins full and their delivery trucks waiting during a critical harvest time. So Brendan Byrne is an Ontario farmer and the chair of the board of directors at the Grain Farmers of Ontario. He's joining us this morning from Essex, Ontario. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Can you describe for us the toll that this stoppage takes on farmers and what happens when those crops both sit in storage? What happens to the rest of the production?
Sure, it's a really stressful time in a good year. You're trying to get the crop off, get it transported, and any of the logistical things that happen that throw that off create a real tough time on the farm. So right now, we're hearing that farmers have harvested some of their soybeans or corn, and they're being told that they can't actually deliver them to the terminal where they ordinarily would due to the Seaway strike.
And then what happens, because the storage bins are full, what happens to the crops that are in the fields?
In the same way as if you have your garden and there's a certain time where you want to pick that fruit or vegetable, and if you go past that, it starts to rot. We could have some of those issues presenting themselves in Ontario where the crop can sit out for a little bit, but timeliness is certainly key here because the weather can turn on us at any time with rain or snow and causing us to not be able to harvest or to have quality issues or yield issues with that crop that's out there.
It's a real critical situation with serious consequences down the line for consumers. You mentioned weather. We know severe weather has affected the growing season this year. How was farming going before this new work stoppage?
Before this, we had some really wet pockets of weather in late August that created some issues going into harvest time in terms of how we were actually going to get the crop off. But the weather has been unseasonably cool with some warmer weather that had happened that allowed a lot of harvest to happen. So in general, we were pretty optimistic. We were hearing there were some pretty good yields in soybeans, and we're just edging into the corn crop. So we're hopeful there as well. So I think farmers were very hopeful coming into this, but it's really tough because for every day that this continues, there's usually about $20 million that goes through that Seaway of grain in a day. Wow. So if you're saying 6 days, we're at $120 million that's not being able to be moved.
I appreciate you putting a price tag on it because we often don't do that. Take us through both scenarios, Brendan. If a deal is reached soon and those ports reopen, what can be salvaged? And if this strike lingers, what's the outcome for Canadian farmers?
Well, I think if the strike does reconcile, which we are very hopeful that they'll stay at the table until they get this done, in the short term, there still will be some catch-up that will have to happen, obviously, when they do get back to work to get some of those boats unloaded and loaded. But it will create some leeway or some headway to say, okay, by a handful of days, we should be back to some sort of normalcy. If the strike lingers, to be honest, I think it's going to create a real hardship across the province here in Ontario because this is our livelihood. Farmers put a lot of money into their crop in the springtime, and they're hoping to get it back in the harvest time here, as well as provide safe food, not only for Canada, but for export around the world.
Brendan, you are, aside from your role here, you also are a farmer yourself. What are you watching for? What are you most concerned about?
I think I'm most concerned with those storage issues right now and trying to finish up my soybean harvest and not being able to send them anywhere. Because if I can't send them out anywhere and I'm at capacity with the wagons that I have here, then I've got to wait. And waiting is really not a great option at this time of year. So we're hopeful that they'll get something done and that the government will kind of keep them at the table and keep the discussions alive and get this reconciled.
Hey, Brendan, I want to thank you for coming on today, putting a fine point on what this means for Ontario's for farmers, not just in Ontario, but across the prairies. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.